Welcome to Inflection Point Podcast, where we cultivate change from the inside out as we ponder the Cairo question. Will Cairo have to protest in his lifetime for the birthright to freely and peacefully exist in the skin in which he was born? We stand on the belief that dismantling racism goes beyond laws and legislation or politics and economics. Here, anti-racism activation is presented as an inside job where personal transformation and accountability impact social change. So take a seat at the anti-racism activation table with Inflection Point Podcast.
Thank you so much for joining into this latest episode of Inflection Point Podcast. In case you notice, I'm smiling from ear to ear. I'm going to share exactly why that is. So if you've been following us, you're familiar with our show. We are dedicated to anti-racism activation and the art of listening in authentic conversation, engagement, and action. I am your host, Anita Russell, and here's a quick hello from Mavis Bauman and Gail Hunter.
Hi, everybody. I'm Mavis. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Gail Hunter, and welcome to this easy show.
Excellent, excellent. So in 2025, we have turned our attention towards this theme of community engagement and the grassroots of change. So throughout the year, we'll explore different stories and strategies and successes of community-driven movements and organizations that are making a difference. So in this episode, I'm very excited to introduce our guest. So if you saw the last episode, we were actually having a discussion about the organization that Shadae McDaniel is connected to. So we were talking about the All Stars Project in New Jersey, and a program called Operation Conversation Cops and Kids. So we're going to go one better this week because we actually has the leader of that work with us. And so we're going to go through a series of discussion points and conversations and all of that. So Shadae McDaniel, I'm just going to do a quick bio and then I want you to jump in and say hello. Shadae McDaniel is the Senior Vice President of Programs and Strategic Initiatives at the All Stars Project. She has been ranked among the ROI New Jersey 2023 Influencers People of Color. And she's also been named by the Newark Venture Partners for her role as one of the 10 badass girl bosses at Brick City. So I just love the sound of that. She was recently featured in innovationoftheworld.com and interviewed as part of an uncut Steve Adubadu. Is that the correct pronunciation? Okay, great. As part of his uncut Confronting Racism series. So at this point, I just want you to introduce yourself, say what you would like to say. I mean, your bio is quite impressive, so I'll be weaving in different aspects of your bio as we go along. But for starting off, I just want people to hear your voice.
Oh, thank you, Anita, and thank you for having me, Gail and Mavis. I'm becoming more fangirls over your work and the efforts that you all are doing. So again, thanks for having me. But no, I think you said a lot. My name is Shadae McDaniel. In addition to being the Senior Vice President of Programs and Strategic Initiatives at the All Stars, I'm also the director of the All Stars Project in New Jersey. So I sit in Newark at the moment, and I absolutely love the work we do there. I'm going on my 10th year at this organization, and it's just been an extraordinary experience.
Wonderful, wonderful. So your career, the evolution of your career is so incredibly impressive. There was something that really, really caught my eye that I linked kind of to your personal journey of how you got to where you are in the role that you have today. And it was a quote that I found in the, New Jersey Urban News. And it was a quote where you were talking about your presence at Howard. So I want to read that, and I want to have a conversation about that and how you think about your own life journey in terms of how you evolved over the course of
Mm.
time. So I just love having those types of conversations. So here's the quote. At Howard, oh, and by the way, my daughter graduated from Howard as well.
Oh, I'm in good company. I'm in good company. Bison families on the phone. That's awesome.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So here's the quote. At Howard, I learned what it means to perform in your community and what it means to be a part of the global community. Even more, I realized that our existence is predicated on how we help others. So can you talk to
Mm.
us a little bit about where you were in your journey in that time period? That is a very powerful statement.
It sounds so much better when you said it. I'm like, did I say that? Like, but like Howard is a magical place. I really do feel like while I might have grown up, I'm the youngest of three of an immigrant parent. My mother came from Barbados. She's a single mother, and I'm the youngest of three. And she was a nurse, and my grandmother was a nurse, and my aunt's a nurse. So I kind of grew up um, thinking about and experiencing the fact that a lot of people go through hardships and despair. And a lot of times they don't have a voice for themselves or the ability. At least that's what I got from when my mother would come home and tell us stories. It was just like extremely sad. But I also grew up dancing a lot. I love dance. And between my love for dance and my love for people, is really what had me think about Howard University being an option for me, and really realizing that that was the mecca for a lot of Black people, just in terms of exploration and activism and all these types of things. So I grew up dancing and experiencing that performance for me at a young age was very transformative. But when I hit Howard's campus and I got to dance on that campus, I was in the Showtime marching band, and I'm a what you call it, a band dancer, and I traveled, and I met these incredible women who are literally my sisters and family, like to this day. I learned that performing with people, even strangers, it really creates a sense of vulnerability and intimacy that you would get no other way. There's an immediate closeness you get through performing and performing with others and experiencing performance with others. So I got that on campus, and while that's happening, because Howard is Howard, it's an activated space, is where people are protesting. We protested everything at Howard. I mean, if the fountains weren't good enough, like there's always something for us to try to fight for better. And Howard kind of just ingrains in you that it's your responsibility. It's not just a pastime. It's not a hobby. Doing good for your community is not the thing you do on weekends. It is the focus. It's a responsibility of yours to support communities that are underestimated and isolated and left out. And I think Howard showed me that the global community is one that is made up of so many different types of people and so many races. Because, while it's a historical Black college, you start meeting a bunch of Black people from all over the world who are completely different. So the diversity within the race was just like astronomical. And it had me understand that the global community is right in reach.
That's amazing. And I was getting goosebumps as you were describing Howard, because when I think back on my Olivia, when she entered Howard University, and she knew probably when she was like 14 that that was the school that she wanted to go to. And she was telling me, and I'm doing the traditional thing, well, what are your top five? And she's like, I don't have any more. That's
Wow.
And so, yeah, it was an incredible experience as I watched her grow. So she was a musical theater major. So she was there when Dr. Johnson was still there,
Yes.
and all of that. So it was an amazing journey. And this is the last thing I'm going to say in reference to that, is that you hit the nail on the head. when I went to college, I went to the University of Pittsburgh, and there are not a lot of people that I went to college with, but that I'm still friends with. But my
Mm,
daughter has a whole cadre of people that she's
a
still
network.
connected to today. And I mean, going on trips together, doing
Yeah.
this together, supporting one another in their professional fields and all of that. So it is amazing. And so it's
It
really
is.
wonderful to hear you share your story. And so what I'd like to do is take that story even a little bit further, because I have another quote from you that I found particularly interesting. And this was also in the New Jersey news. I believe this was from the same article. I always knew I would be involved with a nonprofit organization. I just didn't know what it would look like. I started in health and schools and other community-based work that supported poor communities, Black and Brown. Then in 2024, I met the All-Stars. So can you talk to us a little bit about what did that look and feel like
Oh,
to you when you met the All-Stars?
yes. Well, it was 2020. It was 2014. You're right.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes,
And
2014. I missed that.
you made
Yeah.
me think. I'm like, last year? No, it was
Right, right, right. Yes, you're
2014. But it's so funny to experience the All Stars project as someone who, by this time I had my master's in social work. I had graduated from Rutgers. I had a really good career. I was fine. I thought that I was where I was supposed to be. I was doing some incredible work with New Jersey's poorest counties and working within them to support community, support people to have a more healthy lifestyle and things like that. And I remember coming to the All Stars Project, they had a conference going on. And I'm like, I'm going to go to this conference and I'm going to teach them a thing or two about how to engage poverty. Like, here I am thinking that I got all the answers, these kids, like, how we do. And, I go to this conference and Dr. Lenore Falani is on stage and she's having a conversation that changed my life. She was talking to a very diverse audience, an audience that had affluence, an audience that had educators and professors, audience that had community members, students, young people. I mean, it was just a complete variety. And she talked about the importance of engaging poverty and the symptoms of it and what is needed for our young people to succeed in today's world, and what is needed is development. And she talked about it along with Gloria Strickland, who's my mentor. They talked about this idea or this concept that performance and improvisation is such a strong tool that is overlooked and underutilized, especially in the after school space, which is where All Stars operates. We operate in after school space, where young people can try on new performances, learn how to do new things with people that they've never done it before, and actually create lasting relationships. And I'm just like, at this moment, someone who loves performance and understands the power in it and how I've transcended through it, I was like, how do they know? I thought that was just something that I experienced personally, but wait a minute, there's actually a science to this. There's actually like a template. Like there's ways that this can be expanded throughout, communities. So my jaw dropped to the ground when I heard, and if you've ever heard Falani speak, she plays no games. That woman is an incredible force. She's a fierce woman who knows what she wants to say and challenges people and makes demands on everybody. And so for me, seeing this Black woman in front of, these white affluent men and these business leaders and these corporations, and she's making some like serious provocative statements about their responsibility to connect with poor communities and to support young people in this new and awkward way. I'm like, sign me up. Like, where can I volunteer at? So I remember, going to work and volunteering at the All Stars while I'm like, on work breaks and trying to figure out how I can like be a part of the All Stars. And after a year or so of doing that, and they allowed me to bring my dance programming to the All Stars, and I was volunteering all the different types of ways, I was then afforded the opportunity to join the staff, and it was one of the hardest decisions I've ever had to make because I was quite comfortable. I was working for a university. I mean, you can once you're in a university, I mean, there's really no reason to leave. I mean, it's very comfortable. So I was like, why would I leave a university and join the grind of a nonprofit that's privately funded that we have to, raise money every year and just the stability issues. And I was so compelled, I could not sleep. Like, I remember when they asked me would I be interested. And at first I'm like, well, why would I leave a comfy situation? But I always believe it was divine intervention. I think, spiritually, I think I was compelled and pulled to really investigate this new territory for me. And I couldn't shake it. I had to keep coming back and finding out more how to get involved. And, 10 years later, I've had this incredible experience. My feet have not touched the ground yet. This organization, I'm not saying it just because I work there. Really, it is an organization that is so unique in its ability to have a multiracial movement that supports Black communities that are, impoverished, and support young people and really seeing themselves in new environments. It's incredible. And I've only worked in nonprofit. And I knew at a young age that I was only going to work in nonprofit because I always felt like, listen, if you're gonna twist and toil over work, at least let it be for the goodness of people. If you're gonna, you're gonna go through stuff wherever you work. It doesn't matter. If you have to earn a paycheck, you got to answer to some stuff. But if you're gonna do it, you might as well do it for people, for the good of people and the good of society. So I've had a lot of experiences in nonprofit, but All Stars is literally the most impactful organization that I've been able to be blessed to work for.
So one of the things, and I'm going to switch it over to Mavis and Gail so that they can kind of put their 2 cents in, so to speak. But one of the things that I'm impressed with when I look at the earlier quote from Howard and now this quote and everything that you just said, the word responsibility rings what you said. And you even, when you talked about Dr. Fulani, when she was addressing this affluent group of individuals, she used the word responsibility. I think that is so incredibly powerful. And it's a testimony to your work, Dr. Fulani's work, dedication to that work, because it's really grounded in something real.
Yeah, that's so interesting. I can see how powerful that is. She taught us how to make demands and set demands on people for young people to be able to do the same to us, because it really is about, being responsible for each other.
Mavis, Gail, your comments so far?
Go ahead, Mavis.
Okay. I'm really thinking of 100 questions, and some of them might be a little out of place, but I can't organize myself right now. It's just so exciting to hear about the work you do. And I totally get the work that you're doing because you have a heart for it. I mean, if every kid could hear, find work you love and not chase the dollar, life
this world would be a totally different place.
It would be so different, right? I had not heard of your program until just recently. I grew up in Western Nebraska, so that explains part of it.
Wow.
But I was wondering how you engage organizations to do these conversations. Do they come to you, or do you reach out where you see a need to present, like a specific school, a specific area? How do you get your gigs?
Right. Well, it's almost a loaded question, because the organization itself has a grassroots outreach posture. So we've been over 40 years, we've been out on the streets, and literally, like, we stand on street corners to enroll young people into our programs. We go to schools to enroll our young people. We go to neighborhoods and public housing. We find young people who are mostly disconnected from the mainstream to join our efforts and join our programming. And there's no criteria to join. They don't even have to be in school to join. It really is like, hey, do you want to grow? Do you want to develop? The criteria for Operation Conversation Cops and Kids in particular is that they are of at least 15 years of age. And, we go between 15 and 19 years old. And the way we have worked with communities with Operation Conversation Cops and Kids is we have a three-pronged partnership situation where one is the private public partnership with the police division. So we partner with them. The other one is we partner with community organizations. So since we've been around, in particular in New York and New Jersey, doing programming for over 25 years in Newark, we have a lot of organizations that have all different types of programming for kids, whether there's alternative school, whether it's literally like programming for young people that have been they call it like youth. I don't want to. It's not juvenile, but it's like young people that have been involved in law enforcement or have engaged in law enforcement in some ways. Like we have a lot of connections with organizations, and we house those workshops in those organizations, and so they happen all over the city, and in different places. And a lot of times, yeah, organizations will ask us to come in, but it really has to do with the relationships that we've built over a period of time.
So you find the kids and they kind of lead the way to what program you need to offer next. In other words, it's not kind of a top-down thing where you say in the community, hey, we're having this session on cops and kids. Do you want to come? You find the kids more.
We find the organizations more.
Right.
Actually, the organizations
Oh.
have housed the kids. So we have organizations that have young people who are participating in whether it's getting their GED or
Okay.
they've been involved with the police before. And to your point, we also have programming with our own kids. So like we consider ourselves an organization that houses the workshops too. So All Stars houses workshops, and we also go to partner organizations and hold workshops in the community.
Wow, which is brilliant. Yeah.
I've got more questions, but I should let Gail talk here.
Yeah, no,
first.
I'm
that's
down.
fascinating because,
Ask me all of it. No, but
you are really going right in there and getting the kids that are already, connected somewhere, but they're not
Yes.
connected in the way that you can provide. And it's just incredible. That's wonderful. Yeah.
So I'm sorry, Gail, you had
Go
more?
ahead. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say for the benefit of our audience,
Mhm.
I want to make sure, Gail, if you wanted to make a point that I want you to make that, and then I'll come back and just thinking about it in terms of our audience, because their audience is hearing this All Stars project, and I want to make sure that Shadae has the opportunity to really say what that is.
No, yeah, go ahead.
You're ready? I can do.
Yeah.
So that's a good question. All Stars Project is it's a 40-year-old organization.
Yeah, I didn't realize that. Yeah.
It's been around. We've been working with young people in underserved communities, offering really free out of school programs that focus on development through performance and improvisation. We have many programs. Operation Conversation Cops and Kids is just one of them, but we offer, youth development coaching or development school for youth, which are programs that connect young people with corporate partners or caring adults and other strategic public and private sector partnerships. But at the end of the day, our programming is all about building relationships, fostering positive relationships with unlikely partners, people that typically don't come together, and really using performance both on stage and in life to empower and inspire young people to dream bigger, go further, create new scripts, have new performances, pursue education or not. Maybe it's workforce, maybe it's college, but we also really make sure we make those connections into mainstream so those paths are realized.
Well, you're giving them permission to expand their horizons in so many different ways, especially through the performance piece. I mean, that's, because when you get up there on stage, right? It calls upon you to have to come there and just be genuine, right? And that is that you are, even if you're playing a role or even whatever that participation may be, you have to bring your whole self there. And then you provide the opportunity for them to connect and to practice communicating with with people from other paths, and especially corporations, and so you give them permission to envision, right? All the
Yes.
possibilities. I mean, it's
Yes.
just beautiful how you put that all together. I love it. Yeah.
It's like a rehearsal. Like they get to like try on these new performances that people typically tell them they're either not supposed to, or they feel like they have these like constricted performances in their life. But it's such a liberating experience to have young people try on something new that they may have seen, like, you know, try on what it's like to be a professional in a boardroom holding a conversation, and make the mistakes with it. And we celebrate those too. So it's really, it is a liberating experience.
And the resources that you're allowing them to tap into within themselves is just abundant, right? And they would not have had those opportunities. It's incredible.
I would like to take the program.
I want to bring you to Pittsburgh
because you know, I listened to one of your sessions in a Zoom setup, and I thought this is just so provocative how it peels away facades from people, and then they say things they're kind of even surprised they would say
themselves. Yes.
Yeah, and everybody's learning about themselves and about others, and I could use some of that.
You're helping them see their humanness, right? That we all come from this humanity, right? And they are experiencing it, you know, with adults that are in whatever role they may come from. But that's invaluable, and that's just amazing.
You should see it in real life.
I would love to see your program.
We need to
ask that question later.
Right at this is our midpoint. I know the time is going fast, but this is our midpoint. But what I want people to walk away with from this portion of the conversation is seeing performance as a catalyst for development and change. So we'll take a short break, come back, and continue the conversation. Welcome back to Inflection Point Podcast as we continue the journey from community conversation to community engagement. We have an incredible guest with us today who is from the All Stars Project, and we're just going to jump right back in and continue the conversation with our guest. And what I'd like to do at this point is, we were talking about the power of performance before we went to break. Shadae was talking about the power of performance. So I'd like to dig a little bit deeper into that, but let's talk about it more specifically through that lens of Operation Conversation, Cops and Kids.
That's one of the most powerful transformational experiences that I've ever had at the All-Stars, just through Operation Conversation, Cops and Kids in the performance method. And just to say a little bit about what that is and what it looks like, Operation Conversation, Cops and Kids is a program that really improves the relationships between police officers and inner city young people using performance. The idea for you all to kind of think about and picture is, imagine like 10, 15 cops fully dressed, and all their stuff, their badges and their, walkie-talkies and their guns and their hats, and 10, 15 young people with their hoodies on and their jeans on, and they both walk into this space. The friction is so high. The tension in that room, you can like taste it, touch it, feel it. And really what happens is, we create an environment almost right away where young people and officers perform together, and they do a little bit of improv. And it's a little bit of a warm up in the beginning where they're doing some silly things, and you hear a little bit of a laugh, and it's an awkwardness and things like that. But what's going on is you're breaking a little bit of the tension at the beginning of this experience. As we go on throughout the program, young people and officers are asked to perform together and do improv exercises. And I mean, like, if I was to give you an example, like, we'll team cops and kids up together to perform as a family, or perform as, kids wanting to buy a pet or something like that. And you start seeing them like literally laugh together and perform together. And like, kind of do a step back, like, oh, you're a person? Like, you're a real person, right? And then we sit down and we have some conversations with them. And we ask them questions about, what's the hardest thing they've ever been through, or what's one thing you would want to say to a cop that vice versa. And you start seeing the walls break. The barriers are like literally disintegrating in front of your eyes. And a sense of empathy happens. Like you start seeing them empathize with one another because they start to realize they're not too different. They're not, they don't have that many, differences. They actually have much more similarities than they do have differences. And you start seeing, vulnerability happen. And it's just one of the most, I call it one of the most transformational experiences, because in 90 minutes, you experience performance take hold and be the catalyst for people being able to develop relationships with one another and have really a different outlook by the time they leave. We have kids who come in not feeling it, talking a whole lot of mess, to at the end, young people are in tears and in the arms of officers. Officers are saying things like, here's my card. You call me whenever you got a problem. I'll have your back. Like it's absolutely unbelievable to see this performance in action in this short period of time. I've never seen anything like it, honestly.
Right, right. So I had, when I was talking to Jackie, I had mentioned that I had the opportunity to see the public demonstration of Operation Conversation Cops and Kids, and that blew me away. The first thing that blew me away is that I had never in my life stood in the presence of so many police officers all at once. I first walked in, I was like, whoa, so just kind of getting used to
Yes.
that and just being in the vibe and watching them as they went through various exercises, just to give the public audience a sample of things that they went through. And one of the things that I seem to recall is around this idea of, oftentimes you'll hear police officers, whether in real life or on TV, cop shows and everything, you'll always hear, or often will hear them say, but I just want to make it home every night. But what I heard on that stage was kids say the same thing.
The young people have the same.
Make it home.
They just want to be safe.
Exactly.
They just want to get home.
They just want to make it home.
Yeah,
it's one of those, it's those conversations. Like when you see that happen in the room, the way the intimacy that's created when they can hear each other, it's almost like they heard each other for the first time. Right. It's so like, I wish you guys can see it. I really do. Like it's like this whole, like everything just drops and they're like, oh my God.
They find that common ground, right?
Yes, yes.
They can come together and be authentically vulnerable, right?
Yes. And it helps break the cycle of distrust and hostility. And yes, we're doing it in these small groups. And yes, we do demonstration workshops too, Anita, like you said, that I think are also just as impactful. But the hope is, and the experience is that people start to listen to each other in new ways. And then those people go out into their communities and they have a different interaction with cops now. So it kind of starts to bleed into the culture, right? Mm-hmm. So it's interesting. A lot of the young people that we talk to, when we ask them about their interaction with the police, some of them have actually never been personally interactive with them, but have parents, brothers, sisters who completely just make them say, oh, I don't want anything to do with the police because I saw what they did to so-and-so. And so it's also important for those people to be impacted on by creating this new culture and them having a voice and an action to participate in creating something new with these officers.
Yeah, and
do you always find, excuse me a minute, do you always find policemen and kids from the same community, or is it ever mixed from different areas?
Well, it depends on what you're talking about. Like in Newark, there are different wards, so we get police from everywhere, from all the wards. But Newark is very small, so it's kind of like, I don't know if it would make a huge difference if it's not the same exact city. I mean, same exact ward and the same exact precinct. But mostly the young people are from one area or that area. and the police officers are the ones that, got registered that day.
Okay. The reason I asked the question is it seems to me that police would police differently if they saw a kid up to something and they said, "Oh, I know that kid. I'll go talk to him." There would be that relationship as a foundation. But
Yes.
even, I can see even where policemen are meeting kids that they might not come across again, there's still an evolution in that relationship. So,
well, it's the idea that young people, the idea that we're going for is that when officers meet one or two kids in this program, that those young people would have such an impact on them that it helps them relate to other young people who are just like them or who come from the neighborhoods that they come from. So there is this idea that it's like, okay, if I can connect with this young person, why can't I connect with others? But we do have programming in Newark in particular. We have expanded our programming. So we've trained the Newark Police Division on our youth engagement strategy. So that way they have a better understanding on how to engage young people developmentally in their communities and in their neighborhoods.
Can you talk about what that looks like? That you think
the training?
Yes.
The training. So we trained officers in, I just want to say 2022. About 1,100 officers in the city of Newark, where we got asked to create a curriculum that helps replace their community policing program. So every officer has to go through 5 days of training, and we are the table setting training, the training that they get on the first day. And that was really interesting because imagine coming into a highly bureaucratic institution and saying, "Hey, we want you guys to play more. Like, we want you all to perform more." I mean, they looked at us like, what? What do you mean? You want us to improv? Yes. But, after a while, and, we trained the trainers on how to do this. What you experience is that it brought them closer together. This is what we heard and learned. Through the training experience, they got to be more vulnerable with one another and saying more of what they needed to police better and to police without a hothead. We learned that officers went home and had better relationships with their partners, people that they live with. Wow. So incredible. And we learned that police officers were more interested in working in or being open to working in neighborhoods where maybe they do like after school programming, like play basketball with the young kids or be, school resource officers. Like officers were just down to do, more of those type of activities. So I would say that coupled with the Operation Conversation Cops and Kids efforts, they're pretty substantial experiences that really could help shape, at least how Newark is working with, communities and law enforcement. Our work with New York is extremely long too. We went through it. We're now in our third police commissioner, and it's an extraordinary work there. But even with the work that we do in New York, we've expanded now. Now we do community programming with police officers and young people every month. Like it's not just Operation Conversation Cops and Kids. It's literally cops and kids playing together, literally doing performance exercises together. And these are young people who have been in court-involved youth. So yeah, it really is culture changing.
Yeah. Anita, this makes me think of our win-win scenario. How everybody wins in this interaction. It is not somebody speaking down to someone else or shaming someone else, trying to win something for themselves. It's winning on both sides.
Yeah.
And that's where we want to live.
Well, the funny thing is performance levels the playing field. There can be no hierarchy in performance. Everybody's feeling awkward. Everybody's uncomfortable. And really what it does is sets you up to be comfortable with being uncomfortable. And that's part of why it works.
Everybody shares that, right? Everybody experiences that same thing. Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
have a question. I want to go back to something that we were talking about earlier, because before we came on this call, we got together this morning. That's typically what we do, is just kind of go over what are we going to talk about. We had a conversation. There was a quote, and that quote said, "We are the only organization I know of that works with youth at high school age without professional criteria." So can you explain to us what you meant by without professional
Yeah.
criteria?
So again, I was telling you, I've worked in a number of nonprofit agencies and organizations, and I still do in terms of like partnering with them and partnering with a lot of other organizations. And too often, there's a lot of barrier to entry for young people. There's a lot of like criteria where it's like either you got to be an A student or a B student or a 3.0 and higher. You got to be interested in accounting, or you got to be interested in like, being a teacher, like, or you have to like fit into somebody's box that proclaims you are on a track to being successful societally. And All Stars is one of the only places that I know of that recruits young people, just ordinary young people that are going through life, in some cases surviving, uh, and supporting them to create success in their own life and connect them to the mainstream. And I'm not saying that to put down other organizations that have these barriers, but I think to have a truly inclusive environment where people can create spaces of belonging, there has to be less barriers to entry for people to have access to the mainstream, to have access to new opportunities. So I always find it really interesting. I'm always on the phone with like corporate partners, and we're trying to get young people internships, high school students internships. It's another one of our performances or programs that we have young people learn the professional performance through connecting with all these different corporations. And then those corporations in turn usually give our kids an internship. And, they ask us all these questions about like, well, how old are they? What grades do they have? Are they interested in a particular track? What's their resume? All these things. And sometimes I have to say to them, our young people are growing up in spaces and at times where, while they might not have a 3.0, they are picking up their siblings from school and taking them to school every day. They are picking up the medication for their grandmother on the way home. They're cooking dinner for their entire family and waiting for their parent or their mother or the father to get home late at night. They are, by the time that they are able to sit down and do the work that you're so saying that's so required, it's the end of the day. They got to start doing the whole thing all over again. So a part of what you're seeing is like, it's not an equal opportunity. Because if you really want to like equate what that young person's able to do in their day versus the person that has the 3.5 who doesn't do half of that, I don't know. I'll take that young person in a minute in terms of their ability to have a work ethic and operationalize things and think things through. So, and there's that. And the other part that I think is really interesting is that we use education criteria as a way of indicating success for a young person, but our young people go to decrepit schools. Our young people are in school systems that are falling apart. So how can you hold the standard for a young person to say they're successful and they go to a school that's failing them? It's just not. The barriers are ridiculous to me. If you don't get me on my high horse.
Because you're missing seeing that person and what they actually have to contribute and the skill set that they do have, just because it doesn't look like somebody else's, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And they may not even know their own undiscovered talent.
Right. They haven't been able to
yet. And if they can get away from some of those responsibilities for a moment, the world would open up. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and you're doing that. You're opening up the world for them.
Right. So I want to switch to something called the Onyx Equities and the creation of the All Stars Project of New Jersey's Campus for Performance and Development at the Gateway, which is it's indicated as Newark's most prestigious business complex. So can you talk to us? We're all just about out of time, but if you could just clarify for our audience what that exactly is.
You waited to that question at the end. I mean, it's a big one. I mean, what makes the partnership with Onyx Equities so transformational? It actually goes back to this unlikely partnership effort that I think All Stars is just rooted in, bringing people together who typically don't come together and creating something new. In relationship to Onyx Equities, I have developed a really significant relationship with the managing partner there. His name is John Saraceno. And him and I, along with the All Stars Project, has just had so many experiences around our community building capability. And when it came time for John Saraceno and Honest Equities to rebuild or renovate the Gateway Center, which has a history, a terrible history of being an isolated building or isolated property or facility that was really built after the riots in Newark to allow people to come into New Jersey and Newark without touching the ground. Like they can come from Penn Station and then walk across the Skywalk or the concourse to get to Prudential or Panasonic or wherever they needed to go. They never had to touch the ground. So what it did is it literally kept people out and isolated the people of Newark were not a part of that campus and that experience. This leader at Onyx Equities became an all-star and sits on my board. And he called me one day and he was like, I want to change the narrative. I want to have the predecessors roll in their grave when they find out what we're going to create here. And he was like, will All Stars be the community arm? Would they be the community building arm of this prestigious campus, which is really the gateway to New Jersey? Like it is where people go first when they come into New Jersey off the trains. And in doing that, it was the idea that we're giving our young people and their families a destination, a place that they could come and feel welcome and be a part of the ecosystem and the cosmopolitan experience of Newark and the Renaissance of Newark. So we created a campus where our young people, you'll never, ever imagine this anywhere else, where our young people get to traverse through this office space and buildings that have these Fortune 500 companies and like WebMD and Prudential and all these places. And they're walking through this space like, I own it. Yeah, I'm supposed to be here. But you don't have to look at me crazy. I'm not out of place, actually. I am here to do what I need to do, which is perform in new spaces, create new types of performances with all of you, and hopefully at some point be an intern at your building and help create, build more bridges for young people. So it's just been a dynamic experience and really one that I think that can really be modeled everywhere. If we start looking at our young people, our communities, and those who are underestimated in our communities as part of our future and part of the ecosystem and key players in building what's next, we will have a much more caring and loving and, empathetic work environment and climate in America. So it's been amazing. It's been groundbreaking. It really has changed the way All Stars looks at our footprint across the nation.
Excellent. We are literally almost out of time. So what I'd like to ask you is this. 2 questions. What is the greatest lesson that you have learned in your journey in working with All Stars and Operation Conversation Cops and Kids? And what is your call to action for our audience? So like 2 minutes.
The biggest lesson, I kind of already said them. I mean, the biggest lesson really is that performance is the tool, if not the most powerful tool, to remove barriers, allow bridge building, create lasting and fostering positive connections with people who typically don't come together. And I think it's something that can be used in every aspect, not just in Operation Conversation Cops and Kids, but literally bringing 2 sides of anything, Black, white, Democratic, Republican, Jewish, Catholic, whatever the opposites are, performance most likely, from my experience, has the power to transform those relationships. And then, yeah, I mean, a part of it, what it does is it levels up the playing field, and it creates a space where unlikely people can create something new together and have full ownership of what they're creating together. So my call to action is, listen, perform every day, even when you don't feel like it. Tap into that. And, get involved with the All-Stars. I mean, really, go online. There's always room to volunteer. We have a wonderful involvement philanthropy model where where people not only donate, but they donate their time. Join us as a corporate partner, help transform the world in terms of how our ecosystem is set up for the future of work for our young people. And learn more at our website, allstars.org.
Excellent, excellent. So I just want to thank you. This has been such a powerful conversation. And I want to say even the journey leading up to getting you here was very energizing. So I'm so grateful that we were able to work all of this out. We're literally out of time. We have about 3 more minutes left. And I want to close out. Yeah, usually we'll close out with a quote, right?
Okay.
So I'll close out with this quote. And this is a quote from President Gerald Ford. America now is stumbling through the darkness of hatred and divisiveness. Our values, our principles, and our determination to succeed as a free and democratic people will give us a torch to light the way. And we will survive and become stronger, not only because of a patriotism that stands for love of country, but a patriotism that stands for love of people. And I just thought that was so incredibly powerful. And so usually when we get to this point, I relate it back to a very powerful question that was created at the very beginning of conceptualizing the idea. And that question actually relates to my 4-year-old grandson that I mentioned earlier. And so here's what we call the Cairo question. Will Cairo have to fight in his lifetime for the birthright to freely and peacefully exist in the skin in which he was born? And another way to craft that question is it possible to imagine a future free from the shackles of divisive conversations? I believe the answer is yes. I believe your work, All-Stars Project, Operation Cops and Conversation Cops and Kids, proves that it is possible.
Yes.
It is possible. And we all have a role to play. The key, you said it earlier, the key is that transformative engagement. And so for our audience, based on what you just said, call to action, perform, the question is, what will you do to contribute? Each of you listening, each of you as what will you do to contribute? And so one of the things that you can do is you can join our Inflection Point Podcast private Facebook page, and it's facebook.com/groups Inflection Point Podcast. So finally, I just want to thank you again for being here.
Thank you all. Thank you so much. Thanks for highlighting our work. Thank you for bringing light to it. I'm forever in your grace, and I'm a fast fan. So again, thanks for having me, and I hopefully you'll invite us back again.
Yes. Absolutely. So to our audience, I'd say thank you for joining us on Inflection Point Podcast here on Transformation Talk Radio. We are here every first and third Wednesday at 3 p.m. Pacific time, 6 p.m. Eastern time, as we continue our discussions of community engagement and the grassroots of change. Thank you for listening to Inflection Point Podcast, where our mantra is cultivating change from the inside out. The journey towards anti-racism and social change doesn't stop here. Truth,
reconciliation, and healing come from ongoing, open, honest, and deliberate conversations. Continue to dive in and deconstruct your thoughts, ideas, and beliefs as we band together to manifest social change. Tune in to Inflection Point Podcast every first and third Wednesday at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern, here on TransformationTalkRadio.com for more conversations about how we can cultivate change from the inside out.